I want to hear about your thoughts on Trump's speech and sort of how he handled the Greenland framework, because a lot of people were pretty upset going into it. I take it you didn't really like his speech?
No.
Okay.
No.
Tell me why.
I think he's full of shit. And I'll tell you why he's full of shit is that if he had the choice, he would just simply walk in and take it and say it was mine all along. Just like what Putin did to the owner, remember, of the New England Patriots when they grabbed the Super Bowl ring? It was mine all along. Like, I think he has the same exact attitude.
All right, John, welcome back to the tank. We are the #1 Canadian startup podcast. How do you feel about that?
Well, Matt, congratulations. You've done an outstanding job.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, it was kind of brought to my attention by somebody else, actually. I was not even looking for it. Somebody sent me a message saying, hey, I just asked ChatGPT who the #1 podcast in Canada is for startups. And you came up with several sources referencing it. And so I was like, that's legit. Let's go with it. I'll take it for now. That's a good way to start the year. Let's jump into the deep end right away, John. I mean, you and I have obviously been talking a lot about how Canada is going to be positioning itself on the global stage, and there's nothing more global stage than Davos. Yeah. And I want to go back a week before Davos, leading up to Davos, and then talk about the obviously tremendous speech that people are talking a lot about and got a standing ovation from Prime Minister Carney. So first off, we had China agreement, right? This is a new agreement that Prime Minister Carney announced with China on January 16th during his visit to Beijing, the first by a Canadian Prime Minister since 2017. And this was kind of framed as a preliminary but landmark strategic partnership aimed at resetting strained bilateral relations and diversifying Canada's trade amid U.S. tariff uncertainties, obviously under Trump. So let's parse this out before we jump into the speech he gave at Davos. What did you think about this agreement in the first place?
I think this is a remediation of a specific issue around agricultural products in Canada and the canola farmers in particular. And again, I'm getting confusing stats on what the gross value of the trade is. I heard that our value is $3 billion. The value of the EVs is $1 billion. And so the key always is you got to net the two. So if it's net $2 billion going from us to them, good. It's part of diversifying trade. But I would just say if, people were interpreting it as, let's run into open arms with China as well. Well, I'd say, okay, hold on a minute. Let's not forget that, the things that the U.S. has been doing to us lately is no different from what we've been dealing with on the Chinese for a long time, but in different ways, whether it's IP theft, closed marketplaces, etc. So I like the idea of diversifying trade everywhere. I preferred, though, Mark Carney's speech about working with middle powers because I think he used the word correctly. He never named the United States, but what he was really doing, he was naming the U.S. first and foremost, but he was also naming China and Russia as well. And that any country that has disproportionate power is not good for Canada.
Yeah, it was interesting that this partnership or agreement, which is small in nature in the grand scheme of things, I think to start, was done right before he gave that speech. So let's talk about that speech because Prime Minister Carney departed Davos after a standing ovation at the World Economic Forum, and basically implicating and blaming the U.S. President Trump for dismantling the rules-based international order, the economic coercion and great power tactics against smaller nations like Canada. He, as you said, advocated for these middle powers to form coalitions, condemn these actions, even if it's from the allies of your longstanding partnerships like the U.S., and adapt to this new era where the old order will not return. And so kudos to the speechwriter. Very well written.
Very well written.
But he left for Quebec City. Obviously, he had some meetings that he had to address back home. Parliament was resuming.
Come on.
He had some trade diversification conversations, but come on. I mean, you had time to meet with Apple, Tata, Roche.
Yeah, that was...
And others.
Yeah.
So
I was surprised.
I was surprised that he left right away. I think that from my perspective, you say things like that and then have the China agreement, which is the arch nemesis of the US right now, done the week before. You have done nothing else to basically circumvent the lack of progress on the NAFTA agreements. And you still have a lot of things back home that are not moving forward, but you're diversifying your relationships with middle powers that you've never really had relationships with before. Yeah. It just, it was a word salad to me, it felt like.
Yeah. So I would segregate the two. So what you just said, was the speech full of truth bombs and pointed? I thought it was a great speech that had to be said. Spectacular. So now let's look at the actions right now. And I think this is what you're saying. Ultimately, you're judged by the actions. And now when we look at the actions, and I think first of all, let's go back, almost 12 months ago, we talked about the central focus of the government is to get a trade deal with the United States. And they got voted in really on that basis. Well, you and I were skeptical that wasn't the right way on how to approach it because we had no leverage. And people kept on fighting, saying, we got tons of leverage. We have no leverage. That speech finally admits we have zero leverage and we're dealing with a bully. So our situation with the United States, when you look since then, has deteriorated badly. Running into the arms of China is the wrong answer as well. And just like you said, people think you could magically diversify. There's the answer. People don't know their heads from their asses when you make a comment like that because you just can't do that. It takes a long time. Well, what you can do, and this is the part that I think you're coming to, you gotta build Canada first and foremost, because if we have nothing to trade, right? What are you diversifying with? Number one. Number two, every one of those other countries are having their own issues as well. So, what I do want to see is things like the natural resources, the pipelines, those sorts of things that actually are moving the needle. There was a reference to, removing, interprovincial trade barriers. Somebody show me $1 of economic value that has occurred. It isn't. I was saying that because it's just not true. And I think this is the impetus. What I loved about what he said is, remove the sign out of the window. I agree. Now let's see Canadian action right now.
John, I'm actually fired up about how the way our prime minister spoke to the world in a way that no one has ever spoken before. But what pisses me off?
What?
The fact that he doesn't fucking say this stuff to his own constituents and to the Canadian population. Where is your national address to the Canadian population?
Oh, that's a fair
telling
point.
them the world order has changed, therefore we have to change. We have to accept things differently. He never says things to us. He says things publicly to other nations. And let me finish, because this is really upsetting to me. Trump is out there speaking to his nation, making national addresses, whether people like it or not. He's speaking what is being done in the government, okay? I know it doesn't sound great when it comes out of his mouth, but there are real data points coming out. Carney has never done a national address, okay? Never spoken to the population of Canada, and never addressed the elephants in the room that we have probably lived off of quite some time, pretty luckily. For example, how about the IP around our pharmaceutical industry? How lucky are we to not have to pay exorbitant amounts of prices for pharmaceutical drugs because of the IP rules we have to allow companies like Apotex to exist? How lucky are we that we have the largest market buyer in the world next to us, but we don't let them to sell certain things here? How lucky are we to have certain resources here that we just take for granted, but we also ship it overseas to China? Let's talk about the things that we have obviously taken advantage of, being where we are located in the world, the protection we get being closest to the largest military power in the world, and speak to the population of Canada. Tell us what it is we have to think about and do differently and change. If you're telling us that you're going to change as a government to create new partnerships with middle powers, what do we have to know is coming to change ourselves?
I think you're spot on now. What I was going to say to you, I think, so there's a caucus meeting in Quebec City that's going on right now.
Yep.
Which is what Carney came back for. There's supposed to be an announcement at 1 p.m. So I will be anxiously seeing that you are 100% right. What frustrated me in the last election is, you and I were talking very transparently and honestly that Canada is fucked right now and we love this country, but we pretended with our elbows up that we couldn't battle back. And you and I were saying, folks, we love this country, but goddamn, we have gone off the rails and we need some really hard messages that this beautiful country will need major fixing. That was obfuscated. We see this incredible speech. Canadians have now rallied around that speech. I think that Carney has an incredible opportunity now to, what you just said, is have Canadians honestly understand that we are in a, proverbial war here. This is wartime here. And what do we have to do as a nation and move? And action is paramount. So I am hopeful and optimistic. One thing I will say is, and a lot of folks are hopeful and optimistic, but they're not giving this also an endless amount of time. Most people I have spoken to who, perhaps didn't even vote for Carney are saying, what, I'll give this government time, but, I'll give it to the fall. And if nothing has been done to demonstrate actually concrete action within this country, they're going to be very, very disillusioned. So again, I'm hanging on to hope, but your call out is a fair call out.
I appreciate it. I think let's see what they announce today, but that is something I think needs to be done ASAP.
It's great advice.
I want to hear about your thoughts on Trump's speech and sort of how he handled the Greenland framework, because a lot of people were pretty upset going into it. Like, he ruled out military force. He explained the dynamic of how basically this Greenland sheet of ice would not exist if the U.S. didn't defend it in World War II. It gave it back. Now, obviously, there's asked to have it as a middle ground to defend itself against, the powers that be in Russia and China. And this is a battleground place. And there's obviously mineral rights. I take it you didn't really like his speech?
No.
Okay.
No.
Tell me why.
I think he's full of shit. And I'll tell you why he's full of shit is that if he had the choice, he would just simply walk in and take it and say it was mine all along. Just like what Putin did to the owner, remember, of the New England Patriots when he grabbed the Super Bowl ring? It was mine all along. I think he has the same exact attitude. I think two big things started to occur. He started getting Republicans starting to say, the non-MAGA Republicans saying, hey, you got to back off. And they were starting rumbles of saying, this is going to go to a vote and you're going to lose. Number one. Number two, and this is the one that I think is is the only power, is the bond markets. And the bond markets choked on the Tuesday. And I think the rate went up to its highest peak of 4.3%. It settled back down just a tad. And people started to drop, and that was a small amount of the threat of the dropping. But I think, and this is what I was telling you before, that, remember on the Genius Act and the whole thing on stablecoin is to offset against folks trying to dump the U.S. greenback. And I think a little bit of that fear started to sink in, where Wall Street was saying to Trump too, like, the interest rates are going to go up, U.S. dollar is going to go down, etc. So be very careful. I don't believe that there was a 4D or 5D chess move on here. It's clear that these guys don't operate that way. They just keep on hammering. They see what follows out. I think that they always had this, right. I use the term right, but moral right to build whatever bases that they wanted on there. Number one. Number two, we talk about the mineral exploration. What was hilarious is Trump actually misjudged the size of Greenland because he didn't understand the Mercator effect and didn't realize that the size of Greenland is actually quite modest as well too. And the cost of mineral explorations on the permafrost right now today, and I've been reading reports, is prohibitively expensive now. Now, maybe it's the offshore stuff that you get the access to, but I think that they had this access really anyway, practically.
Okay, so I think that we all know Trump's deal dynamics, the way he comes out with like a crazy ask, right, and then kind of gives, and then it feels and I think that's true. But I mean, we already saw this in terms of the announcements of where this thing will land potentially. The framework is essentially what you said, granting U.S.-based sovereignty and the mineral rights, right, echoing the colonial relics like the UK Cyprus setup, right?
Yeah, so, but they were offering that up already. They were.
I understand. He tries to make it confusing, but Josh Wolf from Lux Capital, did you read his long post he wrote on this? It was fantastic. No, you didn't see it.
I didn't see it.
Okay, so he wrote this long, like almost like blog post now on Twitter X called the Arctic Smokescreen, and he basically lays out how the U.S. pursuit of Greenland under Trump is not an eccentric diplomacy or territorial ambition, but it is purely a calculated supply chain annexation to secure the rare earth minerals needed for military and tech dominance because of how much China controls in the processing elements, dysprosium and terbium, I think it's called. All right. He says like the 90% control China has, we need to have this. And his negotiation tactics are what people are pulling apart, right? You threaten force, then you pivot to a massive financial offer, like erasing Denmark's $142 billion of debt and boosting Greenland's GDP. These are like anchoring points to shift the debate from sovereignty to economics. This is standard Trump playbook, right? But this is not something you should be taking at face value. You should truly look at the underlying thesis, which is what Josh Wolf laid out. And everybody seems to have really laid in on this as well, which is all about the resources. Because of the ways in which weapons are being built now for the future military, you're talking F-35s, you're talking submarines, you're talking EVs. Now, obviously, Lux invested in all these things, so I understand their edge here. Yeah. But this seems like the international news is taking this as like a show of force to own the physical military bases. It's not. It's around the mineral rights.
Yeah, but on the mineral, like I do think that there is a perception of the mineral, but this is where people get this wrong. The rare earth minerals, they're everywhere. Like,
so why aren't we talking about it? Why aren't we talking about it, Carney? We have them.
But here is the issue is
back off of Greenland and let's sign a partnership with Canada on our mineral rights.
The United States has plenty of rare earth minerals, and so does Canada. Here's the issue. The issue is the rare
you have to drill down 100 meters to get them?
Well, no, they're a byproduct of, say, your copper mining.
Sure.
They're all byproducts. The issue is China does it because the amount of environmental damage
that processing
is insane, and it's really cumbersome.
They don't care.
So we just didn't want to do it because of all the. That's why I kind of call BS on that. It's a question of, do we actually want to process all of those things? Because again, I'm not there's better mining experts than I. But when I saw the process, like, oh my God. It's pretty messy. It's caused massive damage in China. You're right. It is a choke point, but I think the mineral is certainly part of it. But I think too, is that when you're looking at the Northwest Passage and the control and choke points you can have and having, but again, what I find funny about that is, and again, I'm not in these discussions, but if the United States said to Canada, we want to build a whole bunch of bases in northern Canada, I'm not sure we would have said no to that. So it's a little bit of, I am perplexed. I do think that ego is overriding. He was talking about how impressed he was with which president was Andrew Jackson on how he just took land and didn't give a shit. and he was going through and he wanted that picture in the White House so that he could stare at the picture of that president because he found most impressed on that. So when I read those things, yeah, do I believe it's part military and part mineral? Yeah. But I think that there was a different way on how to accomplish it, because the bad will that was engendered by this, I don't think it's going away.
Okay. Well, let's see. Let's jump over to the market side. Let's stop with the politics for a second. Yeah. Let's go into the investing, John. Let's have some fun here. Okay.
Yeah.
Top IPOs anticipated in 2026. Can you name them?
Well,
there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7 of them. These are a combination from Bloomberg, Reuters, and a bunch of other tech resources.
I mean, the one that everyone's waiting for is the SpaceX one.
Okay, so SpaceX is one, estimated to be around $1 trillion. Timing is around Q3, Q4, unless they do the reverse merger with Tesla, which Chamath mentioned. I don't know if that's going to happen. Okay, next one, OpenAI, also $1 trillion expectation. This is maybe later in the year, depending on how the lawsuit goes with Elon in April. Anthropic, that's around, maybe 300-400 billion. That one seems to be probably coming more sooner rather than later.
And you saw they're doing one right now, raised. Yep. I think it was a pre of 350.
350, yeah. Massive. I'm so curious to see how much like the ESOP dilution has impacted earlier investors, but nonetheless, you got potentially, I don't know, ByteDance. Is that possible? Maybe ByteDance, I guess it could be, but that wouldn't be in the US, probably in Databricks.
Yep, for sure.
Stripe, Revolut, and Canva.
Yeah, so I saw Canva on the list, so I didn't know. I hadn't heard too much about that.
$50 to $60 billion valuation. You add all these up for just 2026.
Huge.
It's like $3 trillion.
Yeah.
Isn't that incredible?
So I literally was just talking to one of my partners today and looking at predictions. And I said, the one prediction that's going to be interesting is the IPO market. It's not quantity, it's of number, it's the dollar value might unlock the liquidity that a lot of LPs have been seeking. And does that start to change a lot of, what's been going on in the last 3 or 4 years? It could be really interesting.
I mean, you only need half of these to go out, and it will change the course for a lot of investors and a lot of pensions and endowments and so on.
Yep.
John, I think you had your moment, Kepler and SpaceX. Well, we had our moment, a small moment, with the launch of initial investment in a company called Canadian Rocket Company.
Absolutely.
Very exciting. Cool. So Toronto-based Canadian Rocket Company, Canada Rocket Company, as they call themselves, CRC, emerged from stealth with $6.2 million in funding. It was all Canadian investors, including ourselves, BDC, Garage, and a bunch of others. We've been working very closely with the team there and super excited for this. And, this is really a focus on repatriating a lot of SpaceX and Blue Origin talent back to Canada. And some people don't know this, but a lot of the early SpaceX employees are Canadian, and a lot of the parts for SpaceX are actually built in Ontario. So we are in the space game now. You've got yours as well. And then the other side of things is interesting. SPACs are back, John. General Fusion now is going out on a SPAC deal, is set to become the first publicly traded pure play fusion company through a merger with the U.S. SPAC Spring Valley. The deal values the company at over $1 billion and will list on NASDAQ upon closing, similar to the Xanadu situation.
Right.
So this is interesting. We're now seeing SPACs coming back into favor for some of these companies that I guess don't have the path to normal IPO or direct listing.
Mm-hmm.
It also includes a $105 million pipe with institutional investors, along with the $230 million. What do you think this means for some of these companies that are kind of going through the SPAC route rather than the traditional IPO route?
Yeah, I mean, like,
is this for the retail kind of audience?
Probably, and there's a little bit of hype in the spaces, but if this is what it takes to do and this is a financing transaction.
Right.
This is not your conventional, I'm going public for whatever strategic reasons. If this is the way how you have to get money in these very deep tech, change the world sort of things, and frankly, the institutional capital is largely going risk off.
Right.
Well, what do you do? And so you're right. This is a way on how you get access to the retail market. And this is what's going to happen. And I really do wish them the best.
I mean, it's only January and we're already talking a big year ahead of us for IPOs. So until next time, John, thanks as always for joining us in the tank.
Awesome.